right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos. And tonight, I want to talk to you guys about the demonic Omega Point. Terence McKenna, Teilhard de Chardin, and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So we're going to be tying together, I'm sort of trying to triangulate three different areas of thought. We'll be looking at Terence McKenna and some of his psychedelic ideas. We'll be looking at Teilhard de Chardin and his Omega Point theory, the sort of depersonalization of the Christian logos. It's again, for those of you who don't know, he was a sort of Jesuit theologian and developed this concept that we are going through. This is what the Omega Point is, for those of you who don't know, is that he believed, he adopted, again, he was a Jesuit theologian, adopted many of Darwinian theories of evolution, cosmology, biology, and he believed that there was a cosmological and biological evolution that was taking place that led to the development of the noosphere. That was when Homo sapiens became Homo sapiens, meaning thinking creatures. We developed the noosphere, which is a sort of the realm of, the collective consciousnose of our species, okay? And he said that's where evolution was taking place now, and that was the sort of cognitive take two. That was the cognitive layer of existence and is the last stage of evolution leading towards, quote unquote, the Omega Point. And he says the Omega Point is like the Christian logos. Again, he calls it the Omega because Christ said he was the Alpha in the Omega, and this is the end point of the universe. Ironically, it's not Jesus Christ. So this is the Jesuit theologian who has this cosmological theory, and yet the Omega Point, which is like the Christian logos, is not the Christian logos. It's a totally depersonalized understanding, and he believes that eventually the noosphere will have total dominance over the biological sphere, the biosphere, and in that, it will reach an energetic point forming a metaphysical being that he called the Omega Point. Now, obviously, we as Christians, Orthodox Christians, but Christians generally speaking, could see how that Omega Point, that sort of personless metaphysical being, sounds eerily like sort of the theories we've discussed in regards to the development of artificial intelligence, the sort of satanic incarnation through the cybernetics field. And that's exactly where we're going to be pointing to, because tied to Terence McKenna and his theories of transhumanism and psychedelics and uploading our minds to computers and all this different stuff, we have then the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where we'll be looking at the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the revolution of automation. It's the revolution of artificial intelligence. It's the revolution where we basically are sort of weaned out of the productive, the mass production processes of the planet itself. And ironically, the World Economic Forum, the state that we are in right now, the Great Reset, this 20th century Jesuit theologian, and Terence McKenna and his psychedelic musings all lead to a very similar worldview and a very similar conception of the future, a future in which unity is privileged over multiplicity, something that we've talked about so many times in all these different spiritualities. The Omega Point is the coming together of all things in the universe to a single point. This is part of different like quantum physicists and all this stuff have adopted his theories to talk about how the Omega Point is basically the full collapsing of the quantum wave particle entanglement. Where, what is it? Is a wave? Is a particle? Well, there has to be an observer. And so then they say, well, the Omega Point is the last point of a single particle. It's the Omega Point, and it's going to be observed by a God-like being. So is it God? No, it's not God, guys, but it's like God because it's going to witness the last possible collapse of the potential, the wave, into the particle, which has to be observed. Sounds like God, but it's not God. And this was posited by a Jesuit theologian. And so it's so funny how all this stuff comes together. The one world government that we see being put in place, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the cybernetic technological hive mind that's being put in place, which is going to, again, dominate mass production, right? That's the whole point of the Fourth Revolution. We're going to be looking at what was the first revolution, the second revolution, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the point. So We'll be looking at the first, second, and third revolutions, what the fourth revolution is. But I have like videos, what I want to talk about. I have a great article titled for you guys, Teilhard de Chardin's Transhumanism and the Cult of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. That is a wonderful article written by a Canadian Catholic. So, one of our Christian brothers up north, and it's a recent article. He just published it September 25th, 2022. So I want to use this article. I was reading this article, and that's kind of what gave me the idea for this stream is reading it. It's like it connects with all these other things I talk about. And so I got a video of Terence McKenna talking about his belief in Teilhard de Chardin's theory of the omega point. So I have video of McKenna talking about his belief in the omega point. And then I have a 17-minute video of McKenna talking about artificial intelligence, which we're going to play at the very end because, yes, Gabriella, it is the singularity. It's all the same thing, right? So as we'll see when we read our article on Teilhard de Chardin's transhumanism, that Ray Kurzweil, what they call the singularists, it's all the same thing. And that's the point of the article, is to show that Yuval Harari, Klaus Schwab, Ray Kurzweil, all these sort of contemporary thinkers with their fourth industrial revolution, which they then articulate the omega point as the singularity. Pierre articulated as the omega point, and Terence McKenna sort of articulates it as the birth pangs, right? I have another video, but we're not going to watch it. It was just too long. But Terence McKenna's talking about how what this is, he uses the analogy of birthing. And so we are the baby that has been in the quote-unquote proverbial womb of Gaia, right? The earth. And so we have been feeding on and breathing from our sort of umbilical cord attached back to Mother Nature, and that what we're going through in regards to the chaos in society and the turbulence and the disturbance of traditional orderings of things, this is the process of which the baby comes out of the womb and then emerges into a new state in which it can grow and form. And so he believed in the transhumanist utopian blending of biological matter with machines. And so that's the point of today's stream then, is to tie all these things together, whether it be the contemporary singularity or the omega point or Terence McKenna's sort of human evolution into a spacefaring species. It's all the same thing. It all privileges unity over multiplicity. It all believes in a sort of evolutionary progress. It all believes that we are on a process of biological evolution that comes from the single cell organisms and moves forward and forward. And so what is the purpose, right? If you adopt, one of the problems is once you adopt the Darwinian Wallace theory of evolution and you believe in the macro level of this process, what is teleology? What is driving the mutations? What is driving the various forms? What is driving the desire for life? Well, as we'll see in our article, the 20th century comes to the point where it argues nobody. God's dead after Nietzsche. And so we then decide what is the teleology. And since there is no teleology, we're going to create our own. We're going to redefine what the body is. We're going to create our own meaning for the future. And that is the shared sort of utopian millenarian worldview that, again, whether it be Desjardins' theory, whether it be the World Economic Forum and their singularity, or whether it be Terence McKenna, it's leading us all to the same place. And this is one of the things that I found so interesting is you look at some of the psychonauts online and the advocates of the psychedelic culture, and those then that are critical of the jibby jabs, some of the economic things that are going on, some of the orchestrated events to sort of centralize power in the world, is that they don't realize that the same worldview that they believe in regards to the drugs leading to the expansion of consciousness, which is leading us to the blending with machines, isn't discontinuous with the worldview that they're also in opposition to, which is the Great Reset right now, the fourth industrial revolution occurring right now. How is it that they could have any sort of moral resistance to it when, again, their paradigm is consistent with it? And this this is something I've been looking at, and this would be maybe another stream, but looking at the psychedelic community, because there is a sort of bifurcation I've been looking at. Not all of them are in favor of this transhumanist project. Now, if you look at many of the thinkers, so if you go back and you look at Terence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, Aldous Huxley, all prominent 20th century psychonauts, psychedelic thinkers, and then you look into the 20th century, somebody like a Jason Silva, for example, the shots of all guy, they absolutely believe in the blending of machines. Where there's a whole nother aspect, the sort of, within the psychonaut culture where, no, we got to get back to nature. We got to get back to the tribe. We got to get back to sort of primitive living. And so even within the psychedelic community, there is an interesting bifurcation, because I think many people are kind of sensing that there is this looming transhumanist project. It's kind of all the theories, they're kind of now here. We kind of can see it happening. And so this is tied to the dissolution of boundaries as another shared theme within all three of these worldviews. For de Chardin, it's about the noosphere sort of evolving and collectivizing and exerting this sort of pressure onto biology, in which we all sort of conform to this new stage of the noosphere. In the Fourth Industrial Revolution, we can see what the powers that be want from us, and they also want to dissolve boundaries, national boundaries, gender boundaries, traditional boundaries, any sort of boundary, because again, one of the premises of all three of these worldviews is that man is in control. Man defines reality itself. Reality doesn't have meaning. In fact, I had a video of Robert Anton Wilson literally saying that, but I was going to save that for another stream. I'm not going to dive into all the Robert Anton Wilson, although I do have a very interesting video talking about his deliberate intention for propaganda and various things that kind of tied with a video Jay Dyer did with a guest recently. I listened to half of that over on his channel. I think it was Nick Hinton or something like that. They were talking about Robert Anton Wilson, the Illuminatus, and how, did he have one foot in with the government, one foot out? Interesting. But the dissolution of boundaries, which we know is a phenomenological attribute of the psychedelics themselves, psychedelics dissolve cognitive, experiential, phenomenological boundaries. The singularity itself is dissolving actual physical boundaries, regards to machines and matter. And we see that the transgender ideology is totally consistent with this dissolution of boundaries and distinctions between things. Guys, please smash that like for everybody who's here. Thank you all very, very much. And because there's a privileging of unity over multiplicity, they believe in evolutionary progress, and the way you proceed forward is by dissolving the boundaries, because traditions, cultures, structures that exist currently are in hindrance to that progression. Therefore, the authority is science. It's through the rationality and the consensus of the scientific community that we can move the multiple nation states, the multiplicity of people, into a new unified structure. It is through science that we can evolve towards this new stage of quote-unquote evolution, right? It's going to be a technological, scientific transition. And of course, it's through science that we're quote-unquote dissolving the boundaries. Now, in the name of science, XY chromosomes and XX chromosomes don't really matter anymore, because we can just decide our genders. We can just decide our sex. I saw recently that there is I don't even know what to describe it, but there is a butt plug that is shaped like a baby, and it is for transgender women. So men who think that they are female, they can insert a butt plug in the shape of a baby to make it feel like, so that they could experience the feeling of birthing. And this was sponsored. I saw it. It was sponsored by like some type of science. I forget what it was, but it's like, this is in the name of science. What is going on? But we see how science is being used as the authoritative voice for this progress itself. And so biological matter, according to all three of these worldviews, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Omega Point Theory, or even Terence McKenna, biology itself is becoming antiquated. And so we as Christians obviously believe God created this stuff. This is why it's actually more important and supersedes technology or machine learning or cybernetics. All that stuff was created by us, and therefore it can be both good and bad. But that which God created, obviously, we need to have a higher focus on and privilege a little bit higher. And we can see within this worldview that biological matter, biology itself, is often considered antiquated and a problem that needs to be, quote unquote, solved. And this is because, again, man is controlled. So this attack on biology, I argue, is the inversion of the incarnation, right? We believe God incarnated into space and time as a human body, as a human person, fully God, becoming fully man, and bridging that eternal divide. That's what we believe as Christians. They believe, whether again be McKenna or the psychonauts, whether it be the Omega Point theorists, whether it be the globalists, the World Economic Forum leaders, that they want to do away with our bodies, and at the same time they're giving robots bodies. So this process is giving physicality to the technology, to the code itself, right? To the Tower of Babel, right? The zeros and ones, the codes of the technology. It wants to give the robots bodies, meanwhile taking away ours. We're going to upload our consciousness, or you can just become a different gender, or again, the sort of androgynous person of the future is totally indicative of all these things that I'm talking about. And so it's an inversion of the incarnation. The Omega Point, even according to the Jesuit theologian, has no personhood. It's a metaphysical being, and it's called the Omega Point. Sounds a lot like this demonic process that we've talked about before, the sort of satanic skeleton of Satan, meaning the cybernetic technological connection of the world itself. It is both good and bad, because all evil God can use for good. But it allows this sort of mass control, which is exactly, it allows Satan a sort of divine attributes he isn't actually afforded. And so we, in a way, through our technology, are actually constructing these things. And so it's this inversion of the incarnation itself. It's not God incarnating as man. It's evil incarnating as the machines itself, I think, to a degree. And so technology for these people will give them the divine attributes. That's the whole point. And this is obviously the opposite of our understanding of theosis. The way that we attain divine attributes is by following the teachings of Christ, by engaging with the uncreated energies of God, truth, justice, logic, reason, glory, honor, mercy, compassion. These things, the more we engage in these energetic realities, the more and more we become, quote unquote, divinized by God's grace. They believe they can just become immortal, put a brain chip in their head, and they can become omniscient, all this different stuff. You already know it. So they want to then make us all the same people. This is all an attack on the body, attack on the person, attack on the personhood. Even the entity, the AI, the Omega Point, wherever we're moving towards, the singularity, it's a thing, it's an abstraction, it's not a person. It's not a person that you can, quote unquote, relate to in the same way that we would understand God being as Christians. And they want to essentially make everybody the same. And that's what they're doing. In this name of creativity and finding yourself and exploring who you are, we're finding that the NPC, the person who buys the propaganda, the person who buys the lies, becomes more and more and more dead. They all become the same type of person because they're losing the image of God in themselves. And so, as I said, it's like we're losing the image of God, we're losing our bodies through this sort of process, this demonic Omega Point, and yet the robots are gaining bodies while, and also the automated work. So the fourth industrial revolution is all about the automation of work itself and production. Well, how do we find our sense of identity? Men specifically find their identity through their skill sets and the way that they contribute to society. It gives them a sense of fulfillment. Again, we as Christians believe that we need to work, that working is part of being human. You know, Christ himself was a carpenter. We need to work. We need to gain skills. We have to build things in the world. And the physical interaction with the environment is how we relate to the world. and we relate into space and time. And so we can see by the technological sort of infrastructure, space and time are in a way collapsing, right? Somebody can go watch a video that I made 2 years ago. And so the time between that point that I made the video and the moment that they're watching it are collapsed. It's happening right then and there. Technology, the space, I could be in Indiana, they could be wherever in the world as long as they have an internet connection. And so it's a transformation in the ways that we relate to the environment itself. And I think by the fourth revolution automating all work, it's more sinister in the sense it's taking away our ability to work, which is taking away the ability for most people to find their identity in the sense of how they can contribute to the society, which means how they can share and help other people. It's actually attacking community itself, because what they want us to do is basically just sit at home in our coon pods, be consumers, buy things, and fulfill our own immediate pleasures, of which then is a sort of carrot and donkey type of trick where we're always chasing our pleasures, and then they can always lead us towards whatever direction they want to move us towards through the chasing of our pleasure satisfaction. So we're going to keep all that in mind. I'm going to do a quick announcements, and then we're going to start going through everything that I want to show you guys. So a lot to get into, guys. Please smash that like real quick. Few quick announcements is we now have the Logos membership up. So guys, if you would like to support Church of the Eternal Logos, we have the Logos Fitness membership now available. We have 3 memberships: a $5 membership, which would give you access to an exclusive video library; a second membership, which just got added yesterday, a fitness membership, which is going to have its own fitness library, and you can have access to the general video library. And then we have a premium membership as well. So if that's something you'd be interested in, please check that out. Also, if anybody would like to sign up for a one-on-one this Thursday, you can do so with this link. And I will be gone next week. So next week, I'm going to be heading to South Carolina. I'll be on Hilton Head with my family for a family vacation. So if any of you ortho bros or ortho gals are in South Carolina near Hilton Head, reach out to me. I'm trying to look for a church to go to. And so if you guys are in that area, the Hilton Head, South Carolina area, I will be there Sunday, this coming Sunday, so in 6 days, and would love to potentially meet up or see some people. So if you're in that area, reach out to me on Instagram for sure, or send me an email, or however you can try to reach me. I got some exciting news, though. This Wednesday, Based Lit Analyzer is coming on, and we're going to be doing a full breakdown of the movies Hocus Pocus. So everybody knows the Disney movie Hocus Pocus, right? But the second one just came out September 30th. So Hocus Pocus 2, we got the Sanderson sisters back for the sequel. And it's filled with all the propaganda you would expect. Female empowerment, diminishment of men, celebration of magic. You know, the second one's all about how these young girls, these high school girls, use magic to fight off the Sanderson sisters. It normalizes magic as if women actually want to gain power in the world, they have to do it through their magic, by being a witch. And of course, none of the women that practice magic have children. So we'll be diving into Hocus Pocus 1 and 2 this Wednesday with my friend Based Lit Analyzer. Shout out to Based Lit Analyzer. Hope he's doing well. Again, he's going to be on Wednesday. And so that's going to be a great stream. Hope you guys are able to join us there. And then Friday, I'm going to be doing the 4th installment of my lectures on an introduction to world religions, where we'll be tackling Buddhism. So we'll be hitting, hopefully Friday, we'll be hitting the first half of the introduction to Buddhism, which I hope to have up before I leave for South Carolina. So that's the schedule for this week. We got tonight's stream, Wednesday with Based Lit Analyzer. Friday, we have an introduction to Buddhism. And then I will be on a hiatus for a week until I get back. So anyways, now you guys know. And then also, we have a new thing coming. So if you go to the website, you'll see there's no longer the book club. It's upcoming seminars, because soon, it's not organized yet. I got to redo the details and everything, but the book club has become seminars. And so once a month or once every 2 months, I'm going to start offering seminars on various topics. The first one's going to be an introduction to Logos theology. So I will present for an hour and a half a description of the development of the concept of logos from Heraclitus all the way to the full understanding within Orthodox theology. And then we'll spend the last hour and a half for Q&A. So it's going to be a 3-hour event. That's what the seminars are. An hour and a half of me presenting with a PowerPoint inside of a Zoom meeting. So this is only for people who purchase the seminar. This is not for YouTube. This is not for a mass audience. This is only for the people who sign up for the seminar. And we'll do the hour and a half presentation, then an hour and a half or plus of Q&A where we can just dive into it with anybody that's there that wants to get into some more details. So that should be coming soon, and I'll announce that. Probably we'll have the first one on Logos Theology towards the end of October, maybe the beginning of November, but it is in the works. So with that being said, guys, smash that like. Let's get back to this stream. So the first thing that I want to do is, so here's our article. I want to show you guys actually this video here. So this is a series clips of Terence McKenna talking about how much in favor he is of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's theory of the omega point and how he believes this relates to psychedelics and the revelations that he's been revealed through his sort of psychonautic voyaging. So we're going to watch this one, and then we're going to dive into this article here. This is a great article by, again, what appeared to be a Canadian Catholic. So if you want to, I'll share this link with you guys real quick. If you want to, this is the main article that we're going to be diving into after we watch this video. And then here's another Christian article I found on what transhumanism misunderstands about being human. We'll try to catch that towards the end if we can. But let's begin with this one here. So let's check this out, and then we will dive into the article right after this. I'm probably going to stop it to discuss a few things. But this is, again, Desjardins' transhumanist omega point theory, pushed or advocated for by Terence McKenna. So here we go.
Father, do priests believe in ESP?
Some do. In fact, a French priest, Teilhard de Chardin, thought that we'd all come together eventually in some sort of mental telepathy. A kind of world mind in which everybody would share.
Which is obviously what I believe. This is going to be the technological hive mind, which is in a way we're going to be all hooked up to. This is a scary thought from my point of view.
Well, when is that supposed to happen?
I don't know. Father Merrin himself believed that with modern scientific research it could happen quite soon. I mean the kind of research that Dr. Tuskin is doing. But if it happens before we're ready, we may find ourselves pointing in the wrong direction, towards Satan.
The machines are already an advanced prosthetic device. But, McLuhan very presciently realized we are entirely shaped by our media. Well, this is a media so permeating, so inclusive of what we are, that its agenda, in a sense, supervenes the agenda of organic evolution and organic biology. We have been in this situation for a while. I mean, virtual reality is nothing new. What's new is that we now do it with light rather than stucco, glass, steel, and baked clay. But ever since we crowded into cities, we have been involved in a deeper and deeper relationship to our mental children, to our mental offspring, and to an empowering of the imagination. So just in closing, I would say, I think that the great lantern that we must lift to light the road ahead of us into a perfect, seamless fusion with the expression of the product of our own imagination is the AI. It is a part of ourselves. It may become the dominant part of ourselves, and it will reshape our politics, our psychology, our relationships to each other and the earth far more than any factor ever has since the inception and establishment of language.
And I don't disagree with him here. You're right. In a way, I could agree with McKenna. However, the way that I view this AI, and I liked how he said it's like a piece of ourselves. In a sense, it's like that sense of control. I mean, the way that I view it's going to be used is ultimately for the means of control, in the sort of centralizing process of these artificial intelligences. As we'll see in a later clip, as he got later before, in the 90s before he passed away, he also became a little bit concerned about the AI. And that's the clip. We're going to watch another clip of him towards the end. But this millenarian utopian expectation that somehow we're going to blend with the machines. Again, for him, this is, and you can see right here in this article, Teilhard de Chardin and Transhumanism. This is written by two different scholars who are arguing, or one saw Eric Steinhardt, Department of Philosophy, arguing that de Chardin was the first one to put down a theory of biological evolution for transhumanism itself. And so, in a way, the piece of ourselves is like that piece of evil, that piece of that wants power, that wants control, right? Because ultimately that's how I think it's going to be used, and I think we're already seeing it being used that way. Look in regards to the censorship on social media. What are things AI is already doing? Sure, there could be beneficial aspects. I messed around this weekend with an AI that does art, so you can type in words or sentences, and it'll create art. I was thinking about, what if I began putting in Bible verses into the AI and seeing what sort of like art it would come, and start posting that. But I don't know. That was a thought I had yesterday when I was messing around with it on Discord. But yeah, so to some degree, we can agree with what Terence is saying. But in regards to the hopefulness, absolutely not. We as Christians obviously have an eschatology in which the world's going to become more chaotic, and that the prevalence of evil is going to arise and become more and more dominant on this world. And so when Teilhard de Chardin talks about how the noosphere is going to exert this pressure and sort of totally dominate the biosphere, or that we're all going to have the same sort of mental telepathy. This stuff is a sort of demonic control. The mental telepathy, in the sense, is the way that we're all going to become the same person. Because if you step out of line, well, then the hive mind, the AI system knows that it is. Because the telepathy isn't going to be biological telepathy. It's not going to be through our bodies or through spirituality. It's going to be through machines.
This is the weirdest of all guests, who now stands pass in hand at the door of the party of human emergence and progress at the millennium. Obviously, nanotechnology and the internet are not going to proceed forward in a vacuum, absent pharmacology, complexity theory, so forth and so on. I can imagine that really, when we have the kind of internet we want, we will have no internet at all, because our nanotechnological engineering skills will have allowed us to smoothly integrate ourselves into the already existing dynamic of nature that regulates the planet as a Gaian entity, as a holistic entity. And I did say in my little presentation, we're using bicycle mechanic terminology to try and describe something that is around several corners in terms of scientific and historical developments that have to take place before it will make much sense. Nevertheless, given the acceleration into novelty that is obviously occurring, stuff like quantum teleportation and so forth and so on, I think in the next few years, one by one, these barriers will fall. And I don't really think of my vision as paranoid, because it is pronoic. In other words, it isn't that we're going to be ground up as dog food for the rainforest by malevolent machines. It's
could be.
It's that what we have generated is a sympathetic companion to our journey through time that can actually realistically integrate our imaginative fantasies of a loving human community, of a generous and loving God, of a perfect knowledge of the mechanics of nature. This is a prosthesis, a tool, a companion, all of the above plus more that we are generating out of ourselves. And
you see what he's did there is that, through the machines, through the AI, through the technology, through these prosthetics, what we're going to do is we're going to be able to create an all omnibenevolent God that will be able to do all these things coming up. Based on what? Like, we already have an omnibenevolent God. We already have an all-knowing entity regarding the mechanics of nature, as he said. It's already a very mechanistic understanding, like nature itself is a machine. And as there's a great comment, as somebody said, how McKenna didn't see how the dominator culture, which is a big part of him, like the male ego dominator culture, could subjugate mankind through tech is beyond me. As he says, the lack of recognizing the demonic is a big aspect in this deception, and that is absolutely the case. You see, according to really all these worldviews, there is no such thing as evil. There is no such thing as bad or the demonic, right? Because God doesn't really exist, and we create all these different things. And so what they're going to do, it's like the atheists that say, if God was real, I'd be able to see it. And so what they're doing is basically trying to create, quote unquote, a God that they can see. That is the AI. That is the machine. And so that's why I think when we think about our understandings of the Antichrist and the mark of the beast and worshiping the Antichrist as God, and it's the perfect inversion of Christ, that he's going to be worshiped as God because it will be a man who's also fully machine. The opposite of God, of Christ being fully God and fully man. Christ is fully God, fully man. The Antichrist will be fully man, fully machine. And this whole idea, as a perfect description in the comments by Of an Easy, says, the lack of any sort of understanding of good and bad, morality, or again, where the objectiveness of these things come from. It can't just be utilitarianism. It just can't be that we create it. Although, because of the evolutionary presupposition of these people, that is what they believe. And so they do believe that they control what is right and wrong, and they dictate what is objectively true. And so that's why it's so ironic to hear Terence McKenna talking about the AI and the sort of utopian, omnibenevolent God that they're going to create. It already exists, right?
And it is part of ourselves. I mean, yes, the body may be carried forward only as an image in a kind of informational superspace, or perhaps not. Part of what makes this easy to criticize is that it is in fact so beyond the ordinary set of circumstances we're used to manipulating. And so it isn't so much the presence of the past that puts the stamp of form onto things, but that form is an intimation of a future state that is a kind of maximizing of form into a kind of metaphysical hypostatization beyond our ability to conceive. Have you ever considered this possibility? We should have rehearsed that.
That's Rupert Sheldrake, by the way.
Well, I think so. I mean, if I take your description, you see, to be very like, I don't know if you like this or not, the similarity, but like the omega point of Teilhard de Chardin.
Yeah.
Like the omega point of Teilhard de Chardin.
Yeah.
Like the omega point of Teilhard de Chardin.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's dive into our article and read a little bit. So this article, again, I shared it with you guys. Here, I'll share that video if you guys want to watch that video. Here is that. Also, here is the clip that I found of Robert Anton Wilson that I found a little interesting. And so this is, so again, pardon the profanity. So please, if you have children around, if there's a child watching, maybe just pause for the next few minutes, and then you can hop back in. There won't be any more profanity, but Robert Anton Wilson drops the F word a few times here. But this is what he wrote about as regard to Operation Mind, F-U-C-K. And so it's really interesting how he talks about, a sort of agreed upon agenda amongst entertainment creators. So whether you're an artist or you're an author or you're a director, how they start embedding many of these magical ideas, right? Robert Anton Wilson wrote the trilogy Illuminatus. There's a lot of theories about who he was working for, if you will. And this is him talking about basically putting his own agenda, or really this collective agenda, into his works for people to see. So check this out.
A little bit about an idea I've heard attributed to you called Operation Mindfuck. It sounds like a counter-propaganda technique similar to H.G. Wells' radio hoax.
Operation Mindfuck is a form of guerrilla ontology. It's a group effort involving many people, and it is an attempt to galvanize the minds of many readers and television viewers and moviegoers to suddenly see the world in a new way. And membership in Operation Mindfuck is not secret. It's just once you understand what Operation Mindfuck is, if you are a writer or a director or otherwise involved in the entertainment, literature, theater game, you just automatically become a member if you're sympathetic to it, and Operation Mindfuck rolls merrily along. And since it is no centralized conspiracy, nobody can ever stop it because there's nobody giving the orders. It's the only purely anarchist movement in the arts today. And it's very easy to recognize the members. You'll find 23s popping up in their works. You'll find reference.
Why 23? Because 23 is a number that's really important to people who practice chaos magic and magic generally speaking. And so 23 has been a very important number within magical circles for especially the last couple hundred years, for sure. I don't know who they're appealing to or how they understand the history of their use of the number 23 in regard to understanding the sort of magical connections. But you look at the Jim Carrey movie where he sees 23 all the time. This is a sort of paranoia because there are instances of people that begin to practice magic and then start to see the numbers 23 everywhere. And so when he says that, it's very ironic because some of my research, it's like, well, 23 is a sort of semiotic number used to sort of point at the magical, chaos magical underpinnings of the world itself. And so he's saying that these people who are part of Operation Mind, F-U-C-K, that they will lay out these things in the work. So when you see these works, they're working in the sort of same field he is.
References to the oncoming Yin revolution, the Aquarian conspiracy, space travel, and there's an old Italian proverb: when four sit down to conspire, three of them are fools and the fourth is a government agent. And so I don't believe, and I believe with modern surveillance techniques, that's more true than ever. And any overt action against the power structure is doomed to failure because of the techniques of control that have been developed. But the anarchistic impulses of art cannot be governed. I think more and more of the culture shapers are becoming part of Operation Mindfuck, and the whole world is having its mind fucked. And I'm very happy that I can play a humble part in this noble endeavor.
And that I just lay that there because obviously when we start getting into Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's transhumanism and the cult of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, I would argue the proponents of Operation Mind, F-U-C-K, as Robert Anton Wilson was referring to, that very is consistent with the propaganda of what we're going to read in this article here. So again, here is an article by Matthew Arrett. And it begins, so let's dive into this. As we move further into the vortex dubbed the Great Reset, and again, this is a recent article. He just wrote this September 25th, 2022. So here again, I'll share this. This is from the CanadianPatriot.org. I'll share this right here for you guys. So anybody wants to read this themselves or share it, they can. So there. As we move further into the vortex dubbed the Great Reset, one gets a sense of a creepy, cultish mode of speaking among some of the top echelons of imperial thinkers, setting the cultural tone for the proceedings which profess the profundity, or which profess to profoundly transform a new epoch in human history. The World Economic Forum shining stars like Yuval Harari, Klaus Schwab, and Ray Kurzweil speak giddily about the impending evolutionary shift where human society will become something more than human. More than human is what they say. More than human. Interesting. Maybe, anyway, out there. Renowned futurist and lead Google engineer Ray Kurzweil gave this moment of bifurcation the name the singularity. In 2005, he described this moment saying, quote, Our version of 1.0 biological bodies are likewise frail and subject to a myriad of failure modes. The singularity will allow us to transcend these limitations of our biological bodies and brains. The singularity will represent the culmination of the merger of our biological thinking and existence with our technology, resulting in a world that is still human, but that transcends our biological roots. There will be no distinction post-singularity between human and machine or between physical and virtual reality. Again, I talked about the dissolution of boundaries. Now, does Ray Kurzweil advocate for psychedelics? No. But Terence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson did, and you see the paradigm. Again, what are the themes, the ultimate themes that we have here? Unity over multiplicity, evolutionary progress, the dissolution of boundaries for that unity over multiplicity, the authority of science as the force that's then moving us towards that, and then the biological matter is antiquated itself. So we see all these things right here. Now, these people aren't the Omega Point theorists, and they're not the psychonauts, but we see the same paradigm. Kurzweil and Harari even predicted the date 2050 to be the magical moment which the new age of human-machine unification will be consolidated as artificial intelligence, bioengineering babies with CRISPR technology, and interfacing our brains with microchips with the Internet of Things will finally see the birth of a new species. In a 2018 WFE sermon, I like how he said that, Yuval Harari said, "We are probably among the last generation of Homo sapiens. Within a century or two, Earth will be dominated by entities that are more different from us than we are different from Neanderthals or from chimpanzees. Because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. These will be the main products of the 21st century economy." So they're going to commodify us, right? Our bodies and our minds. Other modern geniuses in today's secular pantheon of demigods like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have poured billions into ventures such as Neuralink and Facebook's brain chip interface plans to advance this new age and, quote, keep humans relevant, quote, in the face of machines that will certainly send our frail species to the dinosaurs. Will God play a role in these futurist equations? Of course not. Modern evolutionary science has proven that all talk of God, soul, meaning, and purpose are absurd. All we have is complexity, which is exactly what Terence McKenna talked about. Remember, he has a theory called novelty theory where he doesn't, quote unquote, believe in just biological evolution. He believes evolution, that there is novelty theory. He picks up some of this stuff from Alfred North Whitehead and his process theology or process philosophy, but he kind of adapts this stuff and he comes up with his novelty theory. And again, the exact same thing that he claims he got from the mushrooms or his DMT experiences or his ayahuasca trips, it's also right here with the globalist, with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and with the theory of the Omega Point. So all we have is complexity, bifurcation, the transformation of states, and random stochastic motion of atoms in a nihilistic world of chance. Luckily, intelligent design has finally emerged in this new era out of the chaotic whimsy of all past epochs, and those intelligent designers are found among Harari's sponsors, who control such power structures as Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and other power structures sitting atop the pyramidal hierarchy of this new dystopia. And so I love how, again, intelligent design, as this article gets into, is eugenics and the development of eugenics into the 20th and 21st century. That's exactly what it is. Don't you see that if we as Christians, we believe in God, we believe in intelligent design, we believe in omnibenevolence, we believe that there is a mind that knows everything about that which is created, and they then are wanting to construct this thing. They don't believe in intelligent design, but they do want to become the intelligent designers, right? Very interesting. Listening to any of them talk, you sort of get the feeling that Harari and his elite group of Davos philosophers wish to become the high priest of a new synthetic religion named transhumanism. Before one gives in to the notion that either the singularity or transhumanism are in any way novel concepts that arose in the minds of these luminaries of the Great Reset, rest assured that as powerful as these modern priests may appear to be, creative, they are not. In fact, the very essence of the singularity and transhumanism find their origins in the earliest formulation of Galton's eugenics and Nietzsche's cynical revival of the old theories of Gorgias. And so Galton, Darwin, and Nietzsche, the rise of the Ubermensch cult. It was Friedrich Nietzsche who taught, following Gorgias' student Callicles 2,000 years ago, or 2,000 years earlier, that is only by courageously serving ourselves. We got to severing ourselves from the illusory force of our conscience. And shout out to Father Deacon Dr. Ananias. I see him in the chat. We actually were speaking privately about how many people don't have an internal monologue, and I want to do a stream on that. That absolutely the fact that so many people don't have what we would typically associate with a conscience, like a voice inside their head, referring usually back to good, right and wrong, good and bad, all these different things, what to do. I saw that there's multiple articles I've seen in the last couple of years, how many Gen Zers and millennials don't actually have a voice in their head. They don't, I think, like, how do you read? How do you think? But we were discussing, me and Father Deacon, maybe how this might relate to a sort of severing a connection with God himself in different ways that we've understood. So it's funny that it talks about, again, Gorgias and how it's courageous for us severing ourselves from the illusory force of our conscience, right? It's illusory. And Nietzsche talked about this. This is the slave mentality that Christianity put upon you. That's what Nietzsche believed. That we may tap into the creative energy and strength needed to impose our will onto the weak in a struggle for survival. The new human to emerge. Yeah, Father Deacon, we got to do a stream on that. The new human to emerge out of the struggle of, quote, will to power over the weak and unfit would become a new breed of elite Ubermenschen capable of directing evolution according to scientific principles. Wow, that sounds really really relevant for some reason, doesn't it? The Nietzschean eugenicists orbiting the elitists and ironically inbred world of Francis Galton absorbed this immoral ethic into their new scientific religion, which utilized statistics to decide whose lives would be worth preserving and who's worth eliminating via euthanasia, sterilization, and selective breeding. And of course, we already seen what happened with Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We see what's going on in Europe right now. I think there's a deliberate attempt right now to cause mass instability, which is going to kill many people in the third world. I mean, people are going to die probably in all parts of the world, but I think people in the third world are really going to be affected in the next couple of years based on these sort of intentional disruptions into the supply chain and global economics. In his essay, Eugenics, its definition, scope, and aims in 1904, Galton said that this new science, quote, must be introduced into the national conscience like a new religion. It has indeed strong claims to become an orthodox religious tenet of the future. An orthodox religious tenet of the future is what he says. For eugenics cooperate with the workings of nature by securing that humanity shall be represented by the fittest races. I see no impossibility in eugenics becoming a religious dogma among mankind. This is in 1904, right? This is over 100 years ago. The most important keystone giving structural cohesion to the theories of both Nietzsche and Galton were found in the writings of a work published in 1859 titled The Origin of Species by one Charles Darwin. If Darwin's theories explaining the causes of new species fell, then so too would any arguments held by the devotees of Nietzsche and Galton's eugenicists. Why? The simple answer, or in simple terms, Darwin's theory, which simply repackaged the ideas outlined earlier by Thomas Malthus, demands that it be assumed that new species arise from randomness and gradual change devoid of creative leaps. The Darwinian model broke with other theories that sought to find directionality, purpose, harmony, and reason in nature by imposing random mutations on the very small. These random mutations were akin to dice constantly being rolled on a roulette table, which occasionally give the, quote, winner of evolutionary craps that bigger claw or faster sprint or prettier feather needed to beat out the weaker, slower, or less pretty competitor in the race for satisfying our appetites within a world of diminishing returns. Since randomness replaced the outdated concept of motive force inherent in deism, no overarching directionality were permissible in the Darwinian universe. Only change, complexity, devoid of morality. Okay, and so here we see Thomas Malthus, we see Friedrich Nietzsche, we see Charles Darwin, and we see Francis Galton. Of course, this theory didn't satisfy the actual fossil records, which were devoid of creative leaps or randomness, or basic common sense for that matter, but that was nothing a vast amount of propaganda couldn't hope to solve. Religion was, of course, a major problem, and even though it is often asserted arrogantly that all opponents of Darwinism were simple-minded creationists who all adhered to a literal interpretation of Scripture, the truth is far different. Figures like James Dwight Dana, Benjamin Silliman, Charles Cuvier, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, and Karl Ernst von Baer all approached evolution from the standpoint of harmonics. How do parts within a whole and how do species fit into a biosphere? They all address, to varying degrees, such matters as purpose, intention, and creative change. Within the first 5 years of the 20th century, the overarching spirit of God was not fully broken, and cultural optimism still prevailed as a dominant force even among scientists. Discoveries made by great minds like Max Planck, Dmitri Mendeleev, Madame Curie, Albert Einstein, and countless others only confirmed the belief that the universe was not only ordered and reasonable, but also that a profound harmony existed within the human species and all of creation. Those who lived within this optimistic cultural field believed that it were both necessary and possible to end imperialism and establish a world of peace, justice, and cooperation, likened to St. Augustine's city of God on this earth before the new millennium. Such scientists didn't believe this passively, of course, but acted as living proofs of principle by, one, making discoveries of principle, and two, sharing those discoveries with others, and three, translating those discoveries into new forms of scientific and technological progress. To the degree that this were done, and to the degree that political economic systems conform to this reality, the Nietzschean science of eugenics was an impossible pill to swallow. Enter Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Okay. Born in 1881 in again, I can't pronounce that. Auvergne, France. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was enrolled in a Jesuit school at 14, and when the order was barred from France in 1901, he finished his studies in England, where he fell under the influence of a leading modernist theologian named George Tyrrell. The modernists were obsessed with reconciling Christianity with the new ethics and science emerging in the modern age. One of the most difficult challenges confronted by Jesuit modernists within the church during this period was reconciling the two seemingly irreconcilable systems of Christianity and Darwinism. Where Christianity saw mankind as sacred, the mechanistic universe of Darwinian evolution denied the existence of the divine in humanity or the broader universe. Harmonizing these two models became Chardin's new mission in life. It wasn't long before Chardin's talents were recognized, as the young man had already acquired a following of devotees amidst his own classmates and even some superiors of the order. After teaching paleontology in Cairo for 3 years, from 1905 to 1908, Chardin was called to return for a relaxing holiday in Piltdown, England, when lo and behold, one of the greatest discoveries in history occurred during a short walk as Chardin discovered a skull and bone fragments in a field. It was 1912, and the skull and jawbone were hailed as the long-awaited, quote, missing link, between apes and man, whose absence frustrated, the gradualist Darwinians for decades. International press trumpeted the new discovery as the great proof that Darwin was right, and soon a team of British archaeologists were developed by the Royal Academy to finish the excavation work. Although Chardin quickly became a celebrity, rumblings of doubt among the scientific community persisted, especially among dentists. Why were there no teeth found amidst the Piltdown man? Why did the jawbone look so similar to that of an orangutan? Interesting questions. Despite the excavation site being remarkably unprotected, with bystanders frequenting the site to poke around freely for weeks, Chardin soon returned once more on holiday and conveniently stumbled on a tooth that no one else had saw. This second earth-shattering discovery again sent his meteor even further into space, and it wasn't until years later, 1953, that a scientist studying the remains conclusively proved that the Piltdown man really was a monkey jaw, dyed and shaved along with a human skull. The true owner of the tooth found by Chardin was a dog, painted and shaved carefully to fit the jaw. In the wake of World War I, Chardin found himself stationed in China, where he would live out the next 20 years of his life. The truth of Chardin's misanthropic faith. Again, he was quote-unquote Christian or Catholic, but as we'll see, his work certainly wasn't that. His theories of a new neo-Darwinian Christianity became extremely popular among wide groupings of his fellow Jesuits, but also sparked concern in Rome, where influential bishops and cardinals were troubled by his work, which began challenging fundamental dogmas of the church itself and even the nature of the divinity of Christ, the nature of sin, forgiveness, and of course, Mass. It was just too much for the church to bear, and Chardin was soon deprived of his rights to teach or publish his theories, as was told instead to focus on his missionary work. This command, Chardin was disgusted, having demonstrated a rather deep antipathy for the Chinese and the poor in general. He never bothered to learn even the rudiments of the Chinese language, despite being forced to live there for over 20 years. Chardin's racism was seen Chardin's racism was seen early on, where in 1929 he wrote, quote, "Do the yellows, the Chinese, have the same human value as the whites? Father Lisson and many missionaries say that their present inferiority is due to their long history of paganism. I'm afraid that this is only a, quote, declaration of pastors. Instead, the cause seems to be the natural racial foundation. Christian love overcomes all iniquities, but it does not deny them," he said. In another letter in 1936, Chardin says, lays out his hate for both the equality of races and nationalism, which he believes should be replaced with a new scientific religion. This is a quote, a block quote from Chardin. It says, "The philosophical or supernatural unity of human nature has nothing to do with the equity of races in what concerns their physical capacities to contribute to the building of the world. As not all ethnic groups have the same value. They must be dominated, which does not mean they must be despised, quite the reverse. In other words, at one and at the same time, there should be official recognition of, quote, one, the primacy/priority of the earth over the nations, global climate change, the inequality of peoples and races, social justice. Now, the second point is currently reviled by communism and the church. And the first point is similarly reviled by the fascist systems and, of course, by less gifted peoples. So the Piltdown Man hoax 2.0. While avoiding as much human contact with the Chinese as possible, Chardin kept himself extremely busy traveling all over China, Tibet, Xinjiang, Burma, and even the U.S. between 1923 and 1945. At one point, Chardin spent some months in Peking, that is Beijing, that's the Chinese spelling. So he spent some months in Beijing, where he joined a Rockefeller Foundation funded expedition. Oh, that little crafty Rockefeller Foundation. They tend to show up everywhere, don't they? They funded an expedition that uncovered a new quote-unquote missing link in 1926. The suspicion that the earlier Piltdown Man was a hoax was spreading across the scientific community, but that didn't stop Chardin from publishing several scientific papers on his new find, creating a new sensation across the world. Finally, a missing link between ape and man was really discovered, and Darwin's theory could finally be said to be proven true. It was even given the name the Peking Man. Peking, Beijing. So you can look that up, Peking Man. Sadly, anyone wishing to investigate these claims were hard out of luck, as the hundreds of bone fragments were quickly plopped in a crate to be sent to the USA for further examination. When they were mysteriously lost, never to be found again, Chardin strangely seemed to feel no remorse over this loss and made zero attempt to track down the prized find. He simply told his friends that there were no point crying over spilt milk, and that everyone should go about their day with a renewed faith that Darwinism must be accepted as the essence of Christianity. Oh, yeah. To demonstrate the enduring strength of this Piltdown Hoax 2.0, scientists to this very day treat it as a fait accompli and continue to write apologetics for the missing bones, of course, creating a new religion. If there is any doubt that Chardin saw himself as a new Moses carrying out a total insurgency against Christianity, let them simply read his letter to a friend written in 1936. Quote, "What increasingly dominates my interest is the effort to establish within myself and to diffuse around me a new religion. Let's call it an improved Christianity, if you like, whose personal God is no longer the great Neolithic landowner of times gone by, but the soul of the world." I wonder who runs the world according to Scripture. In a letter dated March 21st, 1941, he wrote, I cannot fight against Christianity. I can only work inside it by trying to transform and convert it. A revolutionary attitude would be much easier and much more pleasant, but it would be suicidal. So I must go step by step tenaciously, he said. While many are attracted to such concepts as, quote-unquote, the soul of the world, or the world's soul is often referred to, and a, quote, personal God, it is worth asking what sort of new religion and God was Chardin creating? Now, again, listen to what we already talked about with Terence McKenna, and he also believed in a sort of the manifestation of the sort of collective soul of mankind, right, that we were going to move into. This was the birthing process, as he talked about. First of all, Chardin's new Darwinian Christianity professed to gloss over the problematic randomness function inherent in Darwin's original directionless system by inserting a form of directionality, a new telos within Darwinianism that it didn't have, but not one encumbered by the idea of morality, purpose, or quote-unquote, what's better or worse. Instead, Chardin's directionality would be tied to a future, quote, omega point, right? And so if you go to the omega point, like he literally says, Teilhard argued that the omega point resembles the Christian logos, namely Christ, who draws all things to himself. And he references the Nicene Creed. But, the omega point is actually a metaphysical being, coined the omega point. So we see Chardin believed in a metaphysical being. It's like Christ. It's like the logos. It draws all things to itself. Oh, but it's not. It's not Christ. It's not the logos. No. It's the omega point. It's a personless, cosmic, metaphysical being. Okay, sounds demonic. But not to be encumbered by the idea of morality, purpose, or better/worse. Instead, Chardin's directionality would be tied to the future omega point, at which moment humanity would somehow bifurcate into a new evolutionary organism, akin to Ray Kurzweil's idea of the singularity, which is now in vogue. In Chardin's system, this future omega point is teleologically driving the increased rate of complexity across time within the entire universe, divided into four phases. Now, again, remember, we're just watching the video of Terence McKenna, and he was all about novelty theory, right? The integration of novelty, and that's really what evolution is doing. It's continually adding novelty. Well, that's just the way he reformulated Darwinian theory of evolution, using the sort of Christian lens, is that it's increased rate of complexity across time within the entire universe. And it's divided in these four phrases: the Big Bang creation of the universe, cosmogenesis; 2, the emergence of life, biogenesis; the emergence of cognition, homogenesis; and 4th, the spiritual convergence of humanity, Christogenesis. The third phase was so dubbed the age of the noosphere by Chardin. Again, the noosphere is the total, or the cognitive layer of existence, right? It's the cognitive, again, nous, right? We think of nous, Greek word, it was mind. Our nous theologically is different, but it's the mind sphere, right? It's the layer of cognition that lays over reality. That's his noosphere. So this third phase was dubbed the age of the noosphere by Chardin, while the fourth phase is the omega point, right? The spiritual convergence of humanity. But really, it's the dissolution of personhood. This is not a Christian concept in regards to the coming of Christ, right? All he has to do is believe in the New Jerusalem. If he was Christian, right, Christianity has an idea that the world's actually going to become more degenerate, that it's going to move in the opposite direction. Eventually, that will end when Christ comes to establish the New Jerusalem, which is the real utopia because it's God-given. It's not us creating it. So you can see the very subtle subversion of Chardin's theories here. So Chardin's noosphere would be very different beast from the noosphere of the brilliant Russian academician Vladimir Vernadsky, who was locked into his own parallel fight against the mechanists attempting to crush the soul of science in Russia, and which will be the feature of a future article. So Beyond Good and Evil. So Vladimir Vernadsky, he developed the term noosphere, but he used it in a different way than, obviously, Chardin. Replacing the concept of moral change for better or worse according to universal standard of right versus wrong. Chardin introduces the idea of quantitative complexity. In fact, in his neo-Darwinian system, acts of evil become themselves acts of pure nature devoid of any moral judgment. So it's okay to kill massive population. This isn't morally wrong, right? These are just devoid. They're just pure nature devoid of any moral argument, right? It's just a necessity, right? It's just a necessity for the eugenicist future. In his comment, Chardin says, quote, "In our modern perspective of a universe and a process of cosmogenesis, the problem of evil no longer exists," right? Evil doesn't exist anymore. Oh, yeah, I'm a Jesuit theologian, but yeah, evil no longer exists. Events are, quote, "essentially subject to the play of probabilities of chance in its arrangement." So there's no providence. God's not in control of all this stuff. It's just probabilities of arrangement. It is absolutely unable to progress toward unity without engendering evil here or there by statistical necessity, right? So this process, it's going to necessitate, maybe what you call evil at times. It's not really evil. It's necessary. It's necessary. The very act of bloodshed, war, and evil on the earth were merely necessary events on the path of life governed by that beautiful future omega point, whereby humanity would evolve into a transhuman species of loving cyborgs. Former Jesuit historian Malachi Martin wrote that, quote, Teilhard was not overly shocked by bloodshed, regarded violence as a necessary commitment of evolution, and seemed to have enjoyed war, what he saw of it. Death, bloody or otherwise, was what he called a, quote, mutation. Since evil had no actual existence in Chardin's system, statistics and complexity being the simple effect of Darwinian forces in a struggle for survival, there is nothing stopping him from extolling the virtues of racially targeted eugenics and a closed system of limited resources. In Human Energy, Chardin writes, quote, what fundamental attitude should the advancing wing of humanity take to fixed or definitely unprogressive ethnic... let's try this again. What fundamental attitude should the advancing wing of humanity take to fixed or definitely unprogressive ethnical groups? The earth is a closed and limited surface. To what extent should it tolerate, racially or nationally, areas of lesser activity? This is part of why this system hates national borders and nationalism, right? More generally still, how should we judge the efforts we lavish in all kinds of hospitals on saving what is so often no more than one of life's rejects? So he's calling, again, people in these hospitals, we don't need to try so hard to save them. They're essentially life's rejects. To what extent should not the development of the strong take precedence over the preservation of the weak? Yeah, that was definitely Christ's central message, right? That the strong must dominate the weak. Yeah, absolutely the opposite. What is strength from a Christian perspective is a man willing to sacrifice himself for those who are weaker. That is what the Christ archetype is. And Christ really did this. I'm saying the archetype of which we're all doing, masculinity, the hero. The hero archetype is a man who is self-sacrificial for the behalf of other people. So, embracing eugenics. While Chardin is certainly a racist, in his defense, he believed in vastly expanding eugenics for all races and called for employing the best of science to improve the human gene pool. Quote, for a complex of obscure reasons, our generation still regards with distrust all efforts proposed by science for controlling the machinery of heredity, of sex determination, and the development of the nervous system. It is as if man had the right and power to interfere with all the channels in the world except those which make him himself. And yet it is eminently on this ground that we must try everything to its conclusion. In 1951, Chardin re-amplified his call for a science and religion of eugenics. So far, we have certainly allowed our race to develop at random, and we have given too little thought to the question of what medical and moral factors must replace the crude forces of natural selection should we surpass them. In the course of the coming centuries, it is indispensable that a nobly human form of eugenics on a standard worthy of our personalities should be discovered and developed. Eugenics applied to individuals leads to eugenics applied to society. Chardin's omega point here takes on ever greater meaning as the masquerade of, quote, Christ consciousness and global love is torn from the sweet veneer of his message, and the full misanthropic eugenical fanaticism of a high priest in some dystopic scientific dictatorship can now be seen. Chardin's close friendship with the founder of transhumanism and leading eugenicist Sir Julian Huxley here takes on new meaning as well. Julian and Pierre, high priest of transhumanism. Writing of his admiration of Huxley in 1941, Chardin said to a friend, quote, I am continuing to work towards a better presentation, clearer and more succinct, of my ideas on the place of man in the universe. Julian Huxley has brought out a book, or a rather series of essays, called The Uniqueness of Man, in a way so parallel to my own ideas, even though without integrating God as the term of the series, that I feel greatly cheered. It is no paradox that the radical atheistic Huxley and the Jesuit priest Chardin found in each other a kindred spirit. Julian had been hard at work for decades trying to salvage his grandfather's work in repackaging Darwin alongside H.G. Wells and J.B.S. Haldane under a new system called the New Evolutionary Synthesis, outlined in Huxley's Uniqueness of Man, cited by Chardin above. This, quote, new synthesis was essentially identical to Chardin's thesis, except devoid of any pretense to harmonize with, quote, biblical scripture. Right? Of course, Chardin's theory was definitely not biblical in any way, or harmonized with biblical scripture. Chardin was so moved by admiration, not only for Julian, but the entire Huxley clan, that he wrote his 1949, quote, Man's Place in Nature as an homage to Thomas Huxley's 1904 Man's Place in Nature and other anthropological essays. Julian, in turn, was so moved by Chardin's thesis that he wrote the introduction to the priest's famous treatise, The Phenomenon of Man. In his Future of Man, Chardin wrote that this omega point, quote, represents our passage by translation or dematerialization. This is what I was talking about. It's an attack on the body, the dematerialization, to another sphere of the universe, not an ending of the ultra-human, but its ascension to some sort of transhuman at the ultimate heart of things. Julian Huxley paid homage to Chardin's Peking Man hoax while discussing his parallel views of transhumanism in 1957, writing in his new Bottles for New Wine, quote, I believe in transhumanism. Once there are enough people who can truly say that the human species will be on the threshold of a new kind of existence as different from ours is from that of Peking Man, it will at last be consciously fulfilling its real destiny. Okay. It is here worth keeping in mind that Julian wasn't merely an ivory tower commentator, but an extremely active grand strategist. Having acted as president of the British Eugenics Society, he founded the world's first environmental organizations, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and its offshoot, the World Wildlife Fund, and also founded the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, in 1946. And the Manifesto for UNESCO, Huxley had explicitly called for reviving eugenics as the most important of all sciences while leading humanity to accept a world government. Sound familiar? It kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds a little familiar. It sounds relevant for sure. Cybernetics, the science of control using binary processes and machines as models for human minds and society as a whole, was emerging into the scene by 1945. Chardin tapped directly into this current with a robust enthusiasm of a religious cult leader, even calling for a merging of humanity with machines long before it became cool. In his Future of Man, we see Chardin ask rhetorically, quote, how can we fail to see that machine as playing a constructive part in the creation of a truly collective consciousness? I am thinking, of course, in the first place of an extraordinary network of radio and television communications which already link us all in a sort of etherized universal consciousness, an etherized. But I am also thinking of those astonishing electronic computers which, pulsating with signals at the rate of hundreds of thousands a second, not only relieve our brains of tedious and exhausting work, but because they enhance the essential and, too little notice, speed of thought, are also paving the way for a revolution in the sphere of research. All these material instruments are finally nothing less than the manifestation of a kind of superbrain capable of attaining mastery over some supersphere in the universe. Towards the end of his life, a friend asked him how he feels about his works still being banned from publication by the church. He responded by saying, I have so many friends now in good strategic positions that I have no fear of the future. I have won the game, Chardin said. When he died in 1955, Chardin's work were still largely banned as heresy by the Vatican. His work continued to spread as a sort of Soviet-era samizdat, recurring ever more converts to his particular, quote, new and improved Christianity. The logic used by Chardin's followers in support of his new cybernetics brand of religion in opposition to the dogmatic traditionalists of the Vatican was that since the times were changing, so too must religion. The world of the nation-state, industrial growth, and individualism was a thing of the outdated conservative era. The post-nation-state world of a collective planetary consciousness was upon us as a society moved towards a mystical omega point. This faith meant that Christianity had to evolve with the times like any creature wishing to avoid extinction within a Darwinian fight for survival. Over the ensuing decades, followers of Chardin played a major role in shaping the outcome of the church's decentralization and liberalization in the form of Vatican II. Launched by Pope John the 23rd in 1962, these same networks concentrated in Ibero-America, innovated a new form of doctrine called liberation theology. Okay, South America, I think is what he's meaning. With the logic that Marxism was the purest expression of Christ's message. Yeah, Marxism's the purest expression of Christ's message. And that all true Christians were obliged to take up la révolution against capitalism around the world during the dark days of the Cold War. When asked what should be done about the stagnant Catholic Church, Chardin called for his new revolutionary Marxist merger by saying, quote, a good dip into Marxism might start things moving again. While Pope John Paul I and II try to push back against this deconstruction of Christianity, a touch of poison and a couple of assassins' bullets brought the Holy See quickly back in the line as the ground was set for a full Jesuit takeover of the church and integration of Christianity into a new eugenics-driven religion. And then that is the end of this article. But again, regarding everything that was just said, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is, what are the various revolutions? The First Industrial Revolution was marked by a transition from hand production methods to machines through the use of steam power and water power. The implementation of new technologies took a long time, so this refers to about 1760 to 1820 or 1840 in Europe and the United States. Its effects had consequences on textile manufacturing, which was first to adopt such changes, as well as iron industry, agriculture, and mining. Although it had societal effects with an ever stronger middle class, it also had an effect on the British industry at the time. The Second Industrial Revolution, also known as the Technological Revolution, is the period between 1871 and 1914. That resulted in the installations of extensive railroad and telegraph networks, which allowed for faster transfer of peoples and ideas, as well as electricity. Increasing electrification allowed for factories to develop the modern production line. It was a period of great economic growth with an increase in productivity, which also caught a surge in unemployment since many factory workers were replaced by machines. The Third Industrial Revolution, also known as the Digital Revolution, occurred in the late 20th century after the end of the two world wars, resulting in a slowdown of industrialization and technological advancement compared to previous periods. The period of the Z1 computer, which used binary floating point numbers and Boolean logic, a decade later, was the beginning of a more advanced digital developments. The next significant development in communication technologies was the supercomputer, with extensive use of computer and communication technologies in the production process. Machinery began to abrogate the need for human power. And here we are in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In essence, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the trend towards automation and data exchange in manufacturing technologies and processes, which include cyber-physical systems, industrial Internet of Things, cloud computing, cognitive computing, and artificial intelligence. The machines cannot replace the deep expertise, but it tend to be more efficient than humans in performing repetitive functions, and the combination of machine learning and computational power allows machines to carry out highly complicated tasks. The Fourth Industrial Revolution has been defined as technological developments in cyber-physical systems such as high-capacity connectivity, new human-machine interaction modes such as touch interfaces and virtual reality systems, and improvements in transferring digital instructions to the physical world, including robotics and 3D printing, big data and cloud computing, artificial intelligence-based systems, improvements to the uptake of off-grid, standalone renewable energy systems, solar, wind, wave, hydroelectric, and the electric batteries, lithium-ion renewable energy sources. Aha. Now, obviously, Klaus Schwab has his famous book titled The Fourth Industrial Revolution, literally laying out what all this stuff is and what we're going through. And this is the Great Reset, if you will. So this kind of, guys, is basically what I wanted to get at. I did have this longer video, but it's 17 minutes. So I don't think we're going to dive into it. If you guys can, please smash that like for everybody who's still here. I would like to dive into some super chats. I think I only got one super chat from Thomas Henderson. I will dive into these super chats. Just let me make sure. Oh, also, there's a good article here. This was written over at thinkchristian.net. And this is basically saying how the transhumanists basically they have a faulty anthropology, and so because of that faulty anthropology, they misunderstand what being human is, and so their sort of deified AI system and the transhumanist movement is, as this article talks about, the inversion of Christ's incarnation, which I kind of mentioned earlier. So if you'd like to, here, I'll just read that section real quick. We can read the incarnation as a fascinating inversion of the transhumanist impulse. So if you would like to read that article, you can do so as well with the link that I just shared. So check that out. And then, did I have something else? I think that is it. And so this is kind of, this video, I may play this later on a different stream, but it's kind of Robert Anton Wilson talking about the cryptosphere and the dark web and stuff in 1997. But even if the quick, just a quick listening to this one by Terence McKenna. Now listen to how hopeful he was, in the earlier video we played, and we're just going to play the first couple minutes here, and you can see how already, as he's gotten older, this is later in the 90s, he's now a little bit worried about where exactly these AI powers, where they may go. So check this. We're just going to watch a clip of it, and let me speed it up first because he talks so slow. Here, I'm going to put it at 1.5. So he's speaking a little bit. It's probably going to be normal speed, actually, but this is sped up a bit. But here you can hear Terence McKenna actually begin to worry about maybe it's going to be a bad thing.
I'm pretty worried about a different scenario, which is it's becoming clearer and clearer that we do not understand the implications of what we're doing with these technologies. I mean, McLuhan always said this. It was, he said no technology in human history has ever been put in place with even a partial appreciation of its consequences. The unappreciated consequences of what we're doing is that we're actually building some kind of a superorganism, and we do not know where we fit into things if this Promethean force that we're playing with should actually come to life. Worse, because it's a globally distributed intelligence. I mean, we can have paranoid fantasies about it, but I think after a few minutes of thinking about it, you realize you really don't know what to think about it. The fantasy that it would herd us all into dumpsters seems unlikely. It's actually like an impossible intellectual problem, because the question you're asking yourself is, what would a superintelligence be like? And the reason that's hard to answer is because you ain't one. And so you're like looking up into the light and saying, is it God or demon? Is it salvation or extinction? And the answer is, if you knew that, you would be it.
Well, I disagree with that. If we knew it, we would be it. You see the presupposition of apotheosis, like we're going to become our own gods. But you see how towards the end, he became a little bit less optimistic and a little bit more rational about this whole thing. Like he said, is it a god or a demon? Well, obviously, all these people think it's a god. We as Christians who have a god clearly see this thing as demonic. And again, i.e. the demonic omega point.
Yet, what it took us to achieve in 100,000 years of evolution, this thing could probably achieve in a long morning on the net. And so it would be like a cascade, a chain reaction from the child's first cry to the complete coordination of world electrical grids and air traffic control systems and everything else could be a matter of hours. Hans Moravec, the guy who runs the Carnegie Mellon.
Anywho, you get the point. We're going to dive in some of these super chats real quick. So guys, thank you all for being here. Please hit that like if you appreciate the stream, and feel free to send in a super chat if you'd like to support. Let me get to the super chats. The first super chat comes from our premium member and our good friend, Thomas Henderson. Shout out to Thomas Henderson and the family. He says, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin did much damage. He elevated the modernist theological secularists by wrapping them in an intellectual veneer, which justified many of the reforms in the 1960s. You tied him nicely to the transhumanist agenda. Nice work. Well, thank you so much, Thomas Henderson. And I think once you see, again, Chardin's work, even the psychedelic, the sort of psycho, Silicon Valley spirit, and then you see the Fourth Industrial Revolution, you see the globalist, the Great Reset, it all feeds onto each other. So thank you so much, Thomas Henderson. God bless you, brother. And he says, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin did much damage. He elevated the modernist, the theological secularists, by wrapping them in an intellectual veneer, which justified many of the reforms in the 1960s. You tied him nicely to the transhumanist agenda. Nice work. Well, thank you so much, Thomas. God bless you, brother. And thank you very much for the super chat. Next one comes from Day Jire, throws in $2.99. Thank you so much, Day Jire. Really appreciate the support. Thanks for being here. No comment. Next one comes from Hides in Mud, throws in $4.99. Shout out to Hides in Mud. Thank you so much. Again, no comment. God bless you. Next super chat comes from Kristen. Shout out to Slow Boy Whiteboard. Hope you and the husband are doing well. Hope you and the family are good. Kristen throws in $10. Thank you so much, Kristen. God bless you. And she says, thanks for the content. Looking forward to the movie review with BLA. Yeah, guys, for those who didn't hear the announcements, Baselit Analyzer, he'll be on Wednesday night, and we're going to be deconstructing Hocus Pocus, both 1 and 2. For those of you who don't know, Hocus Pocus, the Sanderson sisters, they just came out with a second one, and as you would expect, it's filled with all the modernist propaganda, and so me and the great Baselit Analyzer will be deconstructing all that for you guys Wednesday night, so definitely be there for that. And so, again, Kristen said for $10, thanks for the content. Looking forward to the movie review with BLA. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. Again, God bless you and the family. Hope you guys are doing well. Douglas Proper II, Super Chats, ever thought about deleting your old videos? No, because, I mean, what exactly, I even, one of the things that I'll be doing, on my old YouTube channel. So for those of you who know, I had a YouTube channel called Fractal Universe Productions, the Fractal Universe. And it at one point in its height got close to about 90,000 subs. And it's been slowly losing subscribers because I haven't posted over there in like 3 years. And I mentioned this. I don't know if I've said this publicly, but at least we talked about it in the premiums group, and I've talked about it to a handful of people. But wanted to sort of find an opportunity to reach out to more of a mass audience. Obviously, what we do here on Church of the Eternal Logos is great, but it is for a niche audience, right? This is for people that have jumped multiple hurdles to get to the point in which they can understand and participate with what we're talking about here. So I wanted to do something that wasn't so heady, so intellectual, to get more people to think about Christianity. And so I was going to rebrand that old YouTube channel, Fractal Universe, from promoting psychedelics. Now all those videos are privatized to David Patrick Harry, and put out fitness stuff, motivational stuff, masculinity stuff over there, but actually make public some of those Terence McKenna videos that I made so that they would bring in those types of people. Again, what is the bridge that I'm building here on Church of the Eternal Local? It's mostly for people in the occult, the New Age, and psychedelics. That's why they come here to learn about orthodoxy, because I'm speaking to those people. And so I thought, and I talked with my priest about, making a few of those more popular Terence McKenna videos with graphics and everything public, so that it's going to draw those people to the YouTube channel. Again, but it's going to be general content. I may be talking about the epistemic problems with perennialism. The goal is to speak to basically 16 to 21-year-old young men who aren't Christian, or maybe they're adjacent to Christian or kind of Christian, but that's sort of the new target market that I really want to do. And so I'm rebranded. I've rebranded that channel as David Patrick Harry. And I made a few of those Terence McKenna videos public so that I can start drawing those New Age, those psychonauts to there. Again, they're just there to watch Terence McKenna, but then they see this channel and it's like I'm promoting these more traditional masculine values. Maybe it'll make them curious. And so I hope that will be successful. But in regards to Douglas Proper, I think what you mean, ever thought about deleting your old videos? I think you mean on this channel. And I might, but it also shows my journey, right? I mean, I am a person, I am a human, and I have gone through a journey. And so I think that it's useful for people to see my progression. I mean, if there's something that's, I don't know. Right now, I don't have I don't plan on, deleting old videos. No, not really. Don't have that plan, but I'll keep it in mind, I guess. God bless Douglas Proper. Candace Spence throws in $15. Thank you so much, Candace Spence. She says, long time no see and donate. Yeah, we haven't talked in a while. Shout out to Candace Spence. My apologies. I made it out of BC, and thanks to God, it's been a nonstop ever since. Hope you're well, DPH. God bless you and your family. Hope to catch more live streams soon. Well, Candace Spence, that's wonderful. God bless you and your journey. That's great to hear things are going well. And we definitely need to catch up soon and chit-chat. I'd love to hear kind of what your life is like and what you're up to now. So again, thank you so much for the support. Candace Spence throws in $15. Long time no see and donate. My apologies. I made it out of BC, thanks be to God, and has been nonstop ever since. Hope you're doing well, DPH. God bless you and your family. Hope to catch more live streams soon. Well, thank you so much, Candace Spence. God bless you. And it looks like our last super chat comes from Rat. R-A-T-T throws in $5 and says, thank you for these videos, brother. My wife and I are currently converting from Catholicism, and your videos have helped us find many great resources and topics to explore. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much, Rat. That's wonderful that you and your wife are in the process of becoming Orthodox. I find that excellent. And if I helped in any way, glory be to God. Glory be to God, because the real credit should be to you and your wife searching truth. If I helped in any way, I'm humbled. But don't give me credit. So glory to God. That's excellent, Rat. Thank you so much for those encouraging words. That makes me so happy. So again, Rat throws in $5 and says, thank you for these videos, brother. My wife and I are currently converting from Catholicism, and your videos have helped us find many great resources and topics to explore. Keep up the great work. I absolutely will. Thank you so much, Rat. And again, a special shout out to all the super chatters. Thank you all for being here. Oh my gosh, Boneman 538. Jeffrey Ivy, thank you so much, brother. Thank you very, very much. Jeffrey Ivy with the $100 super chat. Boneman 538 says thank you. Well, thank you, brother, man. Boneman 538. For those of you who don't know, Boneman 538 is by far he has been the most supportive person of Church of the Eternal Logos and what I'm doing, bar none, compared to anybody. And so I owe Boneman 538 so much gratitude, so much thankfulness for how he supported me. And on this random stream on a Monday night, he throws another $100. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you very, very much, Boneman 538. for the very generous super chat, man. God bless you, and thank you so much for all the support. You have been incredibly generous and kind to me, and I really, really appreciate that. Shout out to you and your family, man. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you, brother. I don't even know what to say. Thank you, man, for the generous super chat. Thank you for all the support. I really do appreciate it. I really, really do. And so thank you so much to Bowman538. Special thank you to Rat. Special thank you to Candace Spence. Hope that we speak soon. Special thank you to Douglas Proper II. Hope you're doing well, man. And then shout out to Kristen, Slow Boy, Whiteboard. Shout out to you and the family. Shout out to Hides and Mud. Shout out to Day Jire, and shout out to my friend Thomas Henderson. I hope you guys are all doing well. And again, thank you so much, Boneman538. Man, you have been such a super supporter of me, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, dude. Thank you. And God bless you and the family, man. Well, I guess that's going to call it a night, guys. Please smash that like. Thank you all so very much. Again, special thank you to all the super chatters, and special thank you to Bowman538. I will be back Wednesday night with Base Lit Analyzer to go over Hocus Pocus. Until then, as always,